Delighted to welcome my dear friend Pallavi to Network Capital. She's been on us, I want to say, from the very beginning. And during that time, she's worked with different political parties, written a ton of articles, and has now published a fantastic book that captures the history and the economic and sociological significance of a very important character from Indian history. So, welcome to Network Capital, Pallavi. Tell us a bit about what you've been up to and the name of the book that you launched.
Thank you so much, Utkarsh, for welcoming me to Network Capital. Hi, hello, big hello to all the members of Network Capital. I've seen your network grow and grow more and more over the years. So I've not worked with many political parties. I only worked with one. So I haven't really switched. But this is a book that I've produced on a character called Nandini Satpathy. Now, very few people in our generation, in the millennials and the Gen Zs, have heard of Nandini Satpathy. So let me give you a little bit of an introduction. She went to Rajya Sabha at the age of 31. She was a student activist in Orissa, and how she shot to fame was that she jumped up on the edifice of the Ravenshaw College and she pulled down the Union Jack, and she was sent to jail, and in jail she met her husband, and that's how she became famous, and they became a very famous couple. Then she joined the Congress party, came to Rajya Sabha, and became friends with none other than Indira Gandhi. So this essentially is a story of a friendship of these two women who were running a nation in their Sambalpuri saris. They were having White Horse whiskey together. They were planning the best public policies that India could have seen in that particular era. And I'll go a little bit deeper into the political significance of that era after I tell you a little bit more about her. And then she was, made the chief minister of Odisha in the year 1972. She played a very big role as INB minister in the Indira Gandhi's Council of Ministers. She was very close to the who's who of Bollywood, be it Raj Kapoor or Nargis or Meena Kumari. They were all her friends. In fact, Vaijayanti Mala, this veteran actress, is even quoted in the book. So this, I feel, is a story of it is, as I feel, is a best kept secret of Indian politics. I mean, I don't know why we don't know more about this woman. And I mean, this is a woman, from 50 years ago. We have so many women in Indian politics doing wonders, and such little is known about them, obliterated from history, like most women are. So this is sort of my tribute to not just her, but to the people of Odisha and to what they enabled so many years ago.
That's fantastic. How did you even get involved in this piece of research? Is it through your political consulting work, or is it through your writing, or just serendipity happened to you?
So when you're, floating around in ecosystems of politics, and my, first brush with politics as a journalist, then I sort of worked in the government system for a bunch of years. So when I was doing a story for Firstpost, actually exactly 5 years ago, during this time, during election period, and I remember the story was on women's reservation in TMC and BJD. It was one of those, women-centric political reservation stories that we were doing. And then I stumbled upon Nandini Satpathy's story about how they, decided a woman chief minister. And then it occurred to me that many years ago I read an obituary by Khushwant Singh, who happened to be a close friend of Nandini Satpathy's, and I remember he had called her out for her drinking or something like that, and I had really taken
Khushwant
offense.
Singh had called out this pub, but Khushwant Singh
Yes,
himself is not a
yes,
person shy of drinking.
that's exactly what. And it's interesting that you said that because he's written books on Scotch, and
Yes.
I've sort of written about that in the prologue. That look, you're calling out a woman for drinking when you yourself drink, and this is someone, and you're reducing her entire life in her obituary to the fact that she had one too many drinks at your party, and that too because at the end of her life she went through a bit of depression. So I mean, that is exactly what happens to women. I mean, whatever good they do, or whatever, these huge things that they achieve, it all boils down to nothing if they've just made, if the other person thinks that they've done something inappropriate, or they've not really fallen in line, which I think is so strange. Nandini Satpathy was a minister. She union minister. She was a deputy minister, minister attached to the prime minister. She was a chief minister. She introduced some fantastic policies, like she tore into the tobacco leaf mafia in Orissa, which I think requires a lot of guts to do. And this woman was doing it 50 years ago and nobody knows about it. So I feel like that really had affected me. So I think it's sort of, when I stumbled upon her name so many years later while doing that story, I said, okay, fine, I think I need to do something about this. Why isn't there a biography? And I was in touch with her. I was having a conversation with her son, Tathagat, who was also member of parliament from the Biju Janata Dal. And then he, asked me if would you like to attempt a book? I said, well, that's a good idea. Maybe I can. And the only thing that he didn't commission the book. He said, do you want to do it as an independent research? I said, okay, I'll do it. I said, the only piece of advice that I'll give you is please do it right now, because these people are very old and they were all, active during the emergency years in the early 70s. And they're obviously their,
Yeah.
80s and their mid 90s now. So I have actually gone to people's houses and spoken to people who were on their deathbed. So there are about 10 people quoted in the book who we've lost during the COVID years. And we've also sort of a tribute to them, and how Orissa played a huge, huge role in Indian politics, and it's barely known.
Well, I mean, hats off to your research, but also it sounds like a fascinating project that you brought to life in 5 years. I know that once we met in 2019, and you briefly alluded to it, and it's really a pleasure as your friend and community leader to welcome you and to discuss the nuances of this book. So congratulations. So this book gets commissioned, and you don't have that much time. You have to create a structure, get it done, put it in a format that's interesting and engaging to lots of people. Can you walk us through that process of structuring the complicated and complex life of this really interesting woman?
So I'll tell you, Utkarsh, what happens is that when you spend years and years in journalism, and and I feel like journalists hardly get any credit for the pace at which they work and the kind of reporters that we have been in. We're not TV reporters. We've been trained in the newspaper era, and we sort of were the journalists who started writing even before social media came in. So we've been trained in long form. So what happens is that when you're writing long form on a daily basis, and you're doing that and you have deadlines, and there is a lot of research, there is a lot of writing to do, there's already a certain level of training with which you enter a project. So you know exactly how to sort of structure, and you know exactly how to, and of course you read a lot of books around the subjects that you're interested in. And for me, political history is a very big subject that I'm interested in. In fact, one of the blurbs here is by Jairam Rameshji, and he's one of my favorites. He wrote the biography of P.N. Aksar, and I've quoted him in the book as well. And so books like that sort of give you a sense of how to sort of not just write about the character, but also write about the era, also contextualize the story within, this political systems, within the economic systems, within the social systems of India. So you sort of have that kind of idea, and then it became easier. And of course, a little bit of it is also organic. It also depends on what kind of feedback you get. Now that you asked me this question, I'll tell you this interesting story about how I had a manuscript which was about 60,000 odd words, because I was really trying to pull information from everywhere. Go to the archives. I spent time in Calcutta, in the National Library there. I spoke to people on their deathbeds, trying to get as much content out. Then so strange that I was watching this documentary short on the 71 war by this guy called Lear Levin, and it had this young dancer who I happen to know, and she was featured in that, and she was talking about Bangladesh, and so about the liberation of Bangladesh. Now, interestingly, because I happen to know her, I just started reading more about the liberation and things like that. Then I realized Nandini Satpathy played a very big role in the liberation of Bangladesh, where as INB minister, where they set up the Free Bangla radio. It is a radio called the Swadin Bangla Betar Kendra radio station. It actually gave Bangladeshis the idea to set up the liberation force of the Mukti Bahini. So here, the radio is setting the narrative of a war. So it's supremely interesting how my world connected, and then she happened to know her, and then she sort of connected me to other people who knew her from the time that she'd crossed
Mm.
over to Bangladesh during the war with arms, with money. So it's fascinating. This book has a huge chapter on the 71 war, which was not there earlier because I
Yeah.
hadn't stumbled on that story. So it's fascinating how these things work, and sort of, and because my first book was fiction, so I've kind of made it very, like, I've kind of tried to draw the reader into the story to give
Mm.
our generation a sense of what, because our generation, as most of, at least you and I, have not seen the 71 war, so we
Yeah.
don't know air raids and we don't know how it was. We may have heard stories. So the time the air raids were happening, the song Dam Maro Dam was being shot somewhere, and these the hippies were smoking these chillums, and so it was a crazy time. So I think bringing back a lot of that time through cinema, through books that I've read, it was supremely fascinating. And I consider myself a minimachivi. I feel like I live in the past and I really enjoy the past. So I think I lived in the 70s through Nandini Satpathy. She made it possible for me to go back to that era of these gorgeous Sambalpuri saris, and where politics was really like, it's so graceful, and like about this, there was a certain very, very charming austerity to everything that these women did.
I think it's very insightful and engaging the way you've captured. I've gone through some of the chapters. What I find very interesting is her friendship with Indira Gandhi, who herself is not the person everyone likes or everyone wants to engage with. I think everyone has an opinion, but I think she's still a very important figure to discuss to understand Indian history. Do you want to tell us a bit about her friendship? What are the nuances of that that jumped out most at you as a historical writer?
Yeah. See, a lot is written about Indira Gandhi, and Indira
Mm.
Gandhi is a very, endlessly intriguing person in Indian politics. Everybody, you either love her, you hate her. There's some opinion or the other, because
Yeah,
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 it's
everyone has a point of view. Yeah,
as a point of view, because the country had never seen something like the emergency, back then. It was
yeah.
just too much it was a very, very big event. And also, Indira Gandhi made Congress a national party.
Mm.
Those were the policies that sort of appealed to the common man and sort of
Mm.
assimilated the entire nation, and took the Congress symbol into people's homes and, in villages, like, in the deepest corners and the farthest corners of India. So I feel like that era is extremely intriguing. But what happens is that there are a lot of stories, and I think it has something to do with the fact that she was a woman leader, where a lot of
Mm.
stories about women just get obliterated. They're not talked about, they're not written about, and like I said, like, when obituary can pull her down so much, there can be other, there's there are so many bits that I found, lacking even in the Orissa archives. There was very little information. If there's something that has been done in her tenure, they don't mention her name there. So it's like,
Mm.
why? And this is an era where we are talking about, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. We are talking about bringing reservation for women in parliament, and, sort of incentivizing it for women leaders to come up. And, and this is a historical problem. So I feel like, with Indira Gandhi, what happens is that when you're really at the peak of power, uh, you're lonely. You need friends to survive in a political system. And there are these clubs where, these old boys groups and clubs, and, like, women are whining and dining and doing all of these things. Where do the women go? So these women
Mm.
would and chat, and they would have conversations about their lives, about their families, about politics, about who's doing what in the political system. And you need to have a friendship like that to sustain you at that peak of that power, that has so much pressure, that has so much of there is so much pressure to take quick decisions. And these women, so there's a little anecdote that Hassan shared with me, that after the 71 war, they had a little party, when they sort of achieved success there, and
Mm.
and with a little party, and they brought like a lot of people together to sort of celebrate the victory. And that was not a very easy war to fight. And even Pokhran, for that matter, Pokhran 1, I'm talking about, the Congress party doesn't sort of even sort of celebrate some of the achievements that it's made.
Hmm.
But another point here is that Nandini Satpathy was she sort of left the Congress because
Hmm.
she didn't implement the emergency. So the friendship with Indira actually ended there because she was a civil
Hmm.
rights activist. She was a communist who came into the Congress, and a lot of communists came into the Congress. And in fact, there's an interesting book also by this author called Satinder Singh on that trend, that there were a
Hmm.
lot of these people. You see, the Communist Party was on the wane, and these
Hmm.
guys wanted really do something for the country, and they wanted to, what was communism back then? It was basically just uplifting poor people from, lifting the last man in the line. So they said, okay, if the Congress is going
At
to do it,
least
Congress is
on
going to
paper,
do.
yes.
Yes, I mean, back then it was predominantly that. So,
Hmm.
they what they thought was that, no, look, the Congress is not going anywhere. Let's just join this party and sort of do what we have to within this ecosystem. So she
Hmm.
was one of those people who came into the Congress with those dreams. And she's sort of, these were the, mainstreaming of a lot of these left-leaning leaders. And then we sort of had this left, Congress I, which was this Congress Indira camp. So she was part of that. And I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of, so, when she didn't implement the emergency, she sort of left the Congress and she started a party with Babu Jagjeevan Ram called the Congress for Democracy. So, and then she also faced a lot of raids and a lot of, there was ED, there was CBI, there was all of those problems there then as well. So, this is really a story of ups and downs. And this is really a story of somebody who's seen the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So I feel like
Tell
that
us a bit
friendship.
about the lows also, at some
So,
point.
so there is a famous case. I'm sure there are a lot of lawyers on Network Capital. There is a very famous case called Nandini Satpathy versus PL Dani. And
Hmm.
this is a little bit of homework that I can give your community to do that. Please check that case and see what that case enabled. And this was the heroine of that case. And they really, she had to go through a lot of trauma because she was not in power. She was no longer the prime minister's closest friend. She was an MLA, although she never lost any election that she fought. And she was fighting elections pretty much at the end of her life. But, being in PMO and determining public policy, determining national policies, and like how wars will be fought and how,
Hmm.
big reforms will be made, and then suddenly being an MLA somewhere in Orissa, it's a very crushing feeling. And I think Natwar Singh put it very well. Natwar
Hmm.
Singh visited when, she was on her deathbed, and I remember him telling me that, going away from power hurt her very badly. So I feel like at the end of the day, this is a very human story about a person who was just leading a very extraordinary life because she had the guts to do it.
Absolutely. And when you take something that somebody has, especially somebody deserves they have, it really feels, I think, pretty hurtful. So I can imagine how her
Absolutely.
last years must feel like. Now, give us a flavor of your publishing process. Normally, is it okay? Do publishers like it when it takes 5 years for a book to come to life? How did you keep yourself motivated through this time? And what advice do you have for other writers trying to get their works out there?
So I feel like writing is something which you can't push yourself to write. If you want to write, you will write. And if you're enjoying what you're writing, then you're obviously not going to give it up. But what happens is that when you're sort of putting together a manuscript, and I think this happens more with non-fiction, with fiction, because
Mm,
with non-fiction, you know that there is a certain level of research and there is a certain level of direction. And in my experience, the research and everything sort of makes it easier to write non-fiction because I've written
mm,
fiction. What happens in fiction, and what I faced my first book, which I wrote like so many years ago, was that you sort of don't know if you're doing the right thing. You don't know if
mm,
you're sort of making sense or no. And you may be the smartest person in on your CV and everything, and even socially, people might think that you've done the rest, you've the best degrees from the best colleges. But when you're writing a book, there is a lot of judgment, and there is a lot because you write in isolation. So when you're alone with your mind, you're constantly judging if you're, doing the right thing or no. I think that judgment is a great thing. And
mm,
the way to get it done is to keep going and to keep sort of sharing your manuscript with people who you think can give you feedback. So feedback is important to a certain extent, but just keep going. Just like keep putting in something on that. Because if you're, how you start a book is, as I see it, I say like, okay, this is a Microsoft file, and let me just, name it. And first I come up with a name, and then I just start typing. So they just all starts from scratch. So just keep going, just keep filling the pages, just keep thinking, because the fact that you started thinking about writing a book means it's already there. So I feel like that sense of questioning your whether you're doing the right thing or no, whether this is actually shaping up as a book or no. A lot of books get junked before, and a lot of people say before 30, 20,000, 25,000 words, books get junked because, the writers lose sense. I feel like there is a lot of scope in even those 25,000 words if you just, believe that you can spin it. So that is there. But I feel with nonfiction, there is a lot of research. I've not done a PhD, but I think it might be somewhat similar to the research process. But here, get an editor
Now you
who
can guide PhD researchers.
my editors were sending me back to the drawing board, even with this saying, "Look, we need more Nandini in the book. We need more." I said, "She's gone, and so many other people are also gone, and her husband is also gone. How do I get information?" And so they really, really pushed me. And this is where I thank Anuj's team as well as the team at Simon and Schuster for really, like, taking this up several notches. Yeah, like my book was, even when you've done research and you're the only person who's looked at the document, so there's so much that you can't tell. Luckily, because I come from an ecosystem of writers, they were all there to, like, ask me, okay, what is this? And, some Russian doll, and I'd given some random other name, and they were like, no, this is, please Google this and check this and check that. And because when you're writing, you're just like, it's, everything is so fast. So for me, how I work is that I write in spurts. I feel like I just don't want to be disturbed. I'll just sit for 6 hours and, like, just get my thoughts out. Otherwise, I'll feel very restless. So that's my writing process is like that.
Was
But
pitching this book very hard, Pallavi? Pitching it to Simon and Schuster?
see, the story is, it wasn't hard. I wasn't hard to pitch it to Simon and Schuster. It was, I actually had publishers approaching me. I picked Simon and Schuster because I think they're a brilliant, brilliant publishing house. They have 56 Pulitzers, and they also did The Great Gatsby. So when they,
Whoa.
so when, wow, I'm so happy. Good. So it's a very good publishing house. It's a very credible. So
No,
and
we're very, very proud of you. When the book came out, I know you're signing it at Bahri and Sons, a very prestigious bookstore in India, in New Delhi, where me and my friends and all of us, we grew up in and around that space.
but
Please,
I have a
yes,
story.
yeah.
My, my first book, I don't know if you remember, first book fiction. You and I went to Bari, and I did some. I left some signed copies there.
Yeah, I do remember that. Also at another bookstore, if I'm not getting that wrong, in Saket, I believe.
Yes, yes. But the one at Bari, I still remember because it's on Instagram as well. That
Yeah.
I mean, and I
So
keep
upon a bright red bench.
on a bright red bench. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna share a link to purchase that book and this one, which
Available anymore, but yeah.
yeah.
You
If you had to,
outgrow your own books after a
yeah.
point. You feel like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Why did I write all this?
But that's
Hopefully, I
growth,
wouldn't.
right? That's growth, right? I mean, that's growth. I mean, if we look back at our past writing and we feel that, hey, we could have done a better job, I think it's a moment of growth. And that book matters.
I
This
feel
book
like upon a
matters.
graduate bench was my peak. I feel like
Hmm.
that was writing because it just poured out of me. And when I look at it, I feel very happy. But I feel like, in your first book, you're always struggling to get a publisher. You're always struggling to, and when you get a publisher, even if it's a smaller publisher, you feel very obliged that they're so being so kind that they're publishing your first book. So
Hmm.
I think, I feel like that maybe that humility is a good thing because it keeps you
Hmm.
growing. But I was just very, I feel like that was really peak for me. It was I was very happy with what I did. And I was just very, like, in my little world, very, very, contented. So,
Yeah. So, just like, because many people have this aspiration of getting their book published, going through. So you've touched upon a lot of ideas here. But still, do you have any practical advice on getting the book proposal done, finding a publisher? That'll be super helpful.
So I feel like I'm a bit old-fashioned in this sense. I feel like first complete your manuscript and keep it ready and polish it and have it, because agents as well as publishers, there is a slush pile. They don't have time to really get into every story. So, but that said, every story, can have a life in it. So give your story a chance, complete it, polish it, make it a little worthy of being read or being presented. Like it should be in a proper shape to be presented to somebody, and then reach out to both agents as well as publishers. I feel like going to an agent is just simpler, it's just easier, it's better, because sometimes writers, especially first time writers, are a bit lost about the publishing process. That and publishing is a very complicated process also, because what will be the print run, when will you actually sign the contract, if they have one book after another. So, and not every publisher is going to be supremely organized as well. So it takes a while for this entire process to happen. So I feel like once your book is done, at least during this process you can make a lot of edits to it. Otherwise, you write in this process, then it's a challenge. But if it's your, say, fourth or fifth book, or you're a writer, you're a seasoned writer, you're a seasoned author, you have many books coming, then you know the process, and then you can actually do that. But somebody just gives you an idea and you already have a publisher, you already know what to do. But for first-time authors, if you're writing self-help, or you're writing a book on, say, law or economics, or a lot of your, NC crowd is your MBA crowd, or I don't know what those chaps read, but like whatever, something.
I think everyone should read history and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But like, yes, something on consulting, or, something on
Yeah.
some stuff. So, whatever you're writing, sort of prepare a final book, and then sort of reach out. That is.
Fantastic. Pallavi, we are so proud of you. Congratulations. Take
Thank
lots
you
of
so much
pictures
for that.
at Bari Sons. And we're always cheering
Really
for you.
proud
We'll
of
put
you for putting together this wonderful community of super smart people. And I hear so much about network capital, and a lot of like people, even within the government, say that, heard this on network capital, and then it would just fill me with so much delight, because you're quoted here and there that, Utkarsh, on Utkarsh's platform, we heard this, and this one said this.
Well,
We're so
tomorrow on the platform, everyone will hear this. Very excited to bring Nandini's story there.
I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you, Pallavi. Speak to you soon.
Thank you, Utkarsh.